is on the cloud. Alrighty, so I think we are live now. So welcome everyone to the Pakistan International Neuroscience Society Meet the Faculty Virtual Cafe. For those of you who do not know me, I am Adil Maiman, who is a Dow graduate class of 2013 and currently a movement disorder fellow at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. And along with me, Dr. Mariam Saeed, who graduated from Sindh Medical College, class of 2018, who's currently a research fellow at Wayne State University doing some QI projects in epilepsy, will be your moderators for today's session. So before we get started, some simple housekeeping rules. So each presenter will either give, a 5 to 10 minutes brief talk on the topic for today, which is how to optimize a residency application. And then we will open the floor for the Q&A session. So thank you to those of you who have already submitted their questions. And then if you guys have any additional questions, I will highly encourage you all to use the chat box and put the questions over there. And towards the end of the presentation, you can either simply raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask your questions yourself, or Dr. Saeed will be more than happy to ask them for you. And please keep your microphones muted during the entire session just to minimize the background noise. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our first speaker for today, Dr. Danish Fetty, who is also our current president for Pakistan International Neuroscience Society and the director of the International Neurology Program. So he graduated from King Edward's Medical College in 2004, moved to United States for his neurology residency, and he completed that in 2012, including a chief year, and then it was followed by a movement disorder fellowship in 2014. He liked University of Nebraska so much that he decided to stay in the same program as an assistant professor, and now he is currently an associate professor and also an associate fellowship director of movement disorder program over there. Our second speaker for today is Dr. Junaid Kalia, who personally I think is an out-of-the-box thinker and a rare Pakistani physician who is also an entrepreneur. So he graduated from Sindh Medical College in 2006, completed his neurology residency at St. Louis University in 2014, followed by a neurocritical care and epilepsy fellowship from UT Southwestern in 2016, and is currently a vice president of clinical strategy at VMed, and also the founder of the AIinHealthcare and the PINS executive member. So I just want to say thank you to both of you for accepting our invitation. And now the floor is yours.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your time and energy to come in. And it's sort of a short notice in this regard. So the main objective of this, it's not really a presentation, it's mainly a Q&A session. And the question that we get is something that we can actually explore and answer. Now, the main reason is, how do you trust us, right? That's truly the main question. At the end of the day, is my advice valid? So the reason that we think our advice is valid is because me and Danish have been working on this for past 3 months, and we always think of content, anything we produce, in a way that is actually more manageable and more structured. So we wanted all this information to come into a form of course as well. So we have been working it in a way that a course is generated. So he has independently interviewed 3. Or at least I think 4 now, that is going to be uploaded at some point in time on the course website, residency program directors. So did I, and actually that was my sister, and I uploaded those. So today's discussion, what we're going to do is mainly focus on you guys, your questions answered in a way that is done. So to have a structure, we're going to have pre-application and application process. That would be the first time, then in which you're going to ask questions about ERAS application, personal statements, letter of recommendations. And then once we're done with that box, we're going to move to the second one, which is post-application, which is including interview preparations, virtual interview tips, and then networking in terms of communicating with the program, thank you letters, additional information, et cetera, et cetera. So those would be the 2 big boxes we're going to move from. Those of you who have already been following me, you should actually know about this if you haven't known. So I try to decrease overall clicks. So in this one page, I have all this information. So there's ERAS application, and this video is something that's going to tell you how to actually write an application and differentiate between what applications is. This is the interview by Kalia, who's the associate program director. She shares inside information. How many applications she gets, how does she select applications, how she ends up selecting for interviews? How does she select for ranking, et cetera, et cetera? So literally she goes through the whole program's perspective and the process that program goes through as far as all the way from application to match. So that's important. And then the second thing, the last thing you're going to go for is the personal statement. So why are you going to write a personal statement? What does that mean, etc.? So these are some resources that I've already recorded. So those of, and I actually, some of people have already shared before via an email. So, you know, they have this information, but still feel free to ask any questions. And if you want me to go formally on some of these things, I'm happy to do it again. So Mariam. Danish, do you have any additional thoughts? And then we can move to Mariam.
Thanks, Junaid. You know, my primary involvement relevant to the session today has been as the director for International Neurology Program. I was also leading the clinical observership at UNMC that we had going for more than 10 years. So I took a routine of 2015. And I also introduced a research observership later on. And then when COVID happened, because all the observerships got shut down and people were not even able to travel, and they had no idea what the neurological programs and residencies look like in North America. So I built an online experience or a course, which was an introduction to the neurology residency for people to know how we teach our residents, what our teaching look like, what our lectures or grand rounds look like, what does a day in a life of residents look like, what do the rounds and how does the campus look like, what is UNMC, you know, what's Omaha like, and so on and so forth. So that has been going on for over a year now, maybe 14, 16 months. And I wasn't sure doing it beforehand, but now I think I realize how useful it is. And it also gave a platform for people to interact with each other and be present together. And initially was started just an introduction to the residency program, but gradually because of the needs and discussions and feedback from the participants, I have been trying to add a little bit about how to get into residency, although that was not my primary focus. But now that I found Dr. Kalia, who's a champion of this topic, I'm following his lead on this and trying to participate and do what I can in trying to give the guidance or suggestions and work with him in developing a course specifically on this topic. Thank you, Junaid, and thank you.
No worries. Yeah, so that's the key thing. Start with the end in mind. So what Danish's process actually encapsulates is an understanding of how you know what you're getting into. And when you know what you're getting into, you actually know how to apply for it. So until and unless you don't know that end result, you are not properly mature enough to apply properly. So that's where that whole insider information from the programs come in. That's why we're putting all of our resources and networking muscle to bring different program directors to share that information so that you guys are better prepared to apply through the application process. And even when you're writing your personal statements, when you're writing your getting your letter of recommendations, you can tell them, okay, these are the skills that you need to highlight in my letter of recommendation because the residency program directors are looking for it. So that's why it's always important that the maturity comes when you have end in mind. So that's the first mindset issue that you should be careful about. Sorry, go ahead, Mariam.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm so happy to see so many of our registrants in this session. As Dr. Maiman said, my name is Dr. Sayed. I am a 2018 graduate of St. Medical College, and I'm in the same boat as most people here because I'm also applying for adult neurology residency. And I'm glad we got a lot of questions, and hopefully we will be able to answer all of them today. We're going to start off with the pre-residency, pre-application phase of anyone's life. And I think we should go as far as being a medical student. Medical students from, I guess, M3 onwards, if they want to apply for neurology after, graduation, what are the activities or the things that they can do during medical school that can help them later highlight their interest in neurology and make sure that their resume comes off very neurology centered? So these were a few of the questions that we got that I kind of compiled into one single question.
So the number one question really is that what can you do specifically to increase your chances in matching in terms of improving your CV, right? When you are a medical student, that is before graduation. The biggest benefit as a medical student you get is that you actually are able to apply for United States clinical experiences, which are not available when you graduate. So that is a very good thing that I personally was not able to get advantage of, even though I had a green card. And the reason behind was multiple, like, family issues and whatever. But at the end of the day, if you have the foresight and the ability, you should apply and then go. So for example, my sister was in AKU, and then I realized like what I missed, and not missed in the sense of that I didn't know, missed in the sense of opportunities and everything. She was able to go to three United States clinical experience. One actually was at Stanford. So when that happens, you are a much more better position as far as your experience goes, that you can actually apply. Once you are graduated, then you are in a different boat. You are now not looking for pre-graduate opportunities, which is, to say that. Then you have to go for clinical experience, which you sometimes have to even pay for. There are people who are charging for it. And the other thing is that you have to actually, it's very specific. And then universities, hospitals do not allow it, especially now with COVID, is becoming a big issue. And then even before COVID, the HIPAA rules and all that, getting the IDs done, it becomes such a big mess. I had 5 students, every year practically in 2018 and 2019. I had to literally, twist arms of administrators to let me allow just for them to become observers. And I was like a director of neurocritical care and director of stroke in that institution. Even with that sort of political power, I had to really go through that. And and then it was a big process for me, right? Get the application, then get the ID, and then get the picture, and then go to that department and go to that department. It just, when before pre-graduation, there is already a department set up. They had a GME department that takes care of these things. And that was so much easier for anyone who had pre-graduate. So I don't think so there's anyone in the audience I see as a pre-graduate, but that's an important question. But anyone who is in the audience who is a pre-graduate at the moment? You can just raise your hands or something. But yeah, that's what I would say. Danish, if you have anything to add.
It's wonderful detail. So I will summarize it this way, that what the medical students here do at UNMC, they join interest group in neurology. So there is a SIGN or SIGN group that are organized by American Academy of Neurology. You can probably reach out to the Pakistan Society of Neurology or your local neurology society, wherever you are, and ask them that you want to set up a interest group. And then actually that will go into leadership section in your resume that you set up and established an interest group in neurology. And what the interest group does is basically it meets, once every other month, and creates an interest for students to go into neurology by sharing latest research or inviting inspiring speakers. And then when you attend those talks, for the speakers that you invite, those talks will also go on your resume as attended talks, and that will show up as an interest in neurology. Within that group or outside, you can do research. The easiest research are to write a case report, and those are perfectly acceptable from medical students to write a single case report or a few case series. And if it's related to neurology, then that will be interesting and also become a talking point during interview. So for example, in my personal statement back in 2006-07, I wrote that my interest in neurology started by seeing a patient with sudden chorea in a third year rotation and clinical rotation. So that was very unique and unusual, at least back that time. Things may have changed, and that became a common talking point in most of my interviews, and they asked me to describe what their experience was like and things like that. So I often talked about it during my residency interviews for that particular case. So it's good to have an anchor like that, something that people can remember you from. So hopefully when they were ranking me, they would say, oh yeah, that's the guy who saw Sydenham Korea, because movement disorders are unusual in neurology, right? So similarly could be a stroke intervention or a come back to me or or something unique that stands out and it's not common. Parkinson's disease. So I remember many personal statements where people said that they have personal experience with someone in family with Parkinson's disease or something like that. So that sticks with me because, you know, I do Parkinson's disease all the time. But you can also write systematic review. You can ask any of the advisors on what are the burning questions in the field right now. And you can do a review of 30, 40 articles or something like that and write that. Actually, Junaid has a lot of opportunities for publishing and research in that terms if you are interested in reviews. And then also there are other opportunities. You can write MCQs for some online websites like Medscape. You can write an article for them. And then presenting at conferences, abstract presentation. So I also chair Apna Merit Medical Education Committee, and today we are doing a podium presentation session. So we invited students to submit their research. So 2 medical students were selected for podium presentation. So they will present today their research topic. And now, even if it's just a research idea on how to do their project, so let's say they have not completed the project and they're still collecting data, but you can do a paper on the design of your project or the idea of your project, and that paper can be accepted and presented like at local neurology society or some other meetings, or PIMS can do this in the future, and then that can go into your resume. You can say I did a podium presentation or an invited talk on this topic on my research at Apna Merit presentation or Apna Merit webinar series or conference or whatever. And there are many such opportunities like that that if you look around you can find. And then American Academy of Neurology accepts. They make an effort that a third of their abstracts that they accept, they try to have it a primary author as a student or a resident or a trainee. So your chances of being accepted at AIN as an abstract are far higher than mine. So my chance of success is 1 in 10, and your success is 1 in 3. So that's much better odds than a faculty submitting an abstract or a paper. So that if you don't realize that, then you're not having an open competition. You're getting an artificial advantage by American Academy, and that's probably true for all other academies. So there is Academy of American Neurological Association, ANA, and there are many subspecialty organizations. So if your work is in movement disorders, there are 2 international movement disorder societies, IAPRD and MDS, and both of them have abstract presentation. There are some national organizations like Parkinson's Study Group, Huntington Study Group, Neuromuscular Study Group, and all those study groups also have annual meetings, and they also take abstracts. So you can, and their odds are even better. There is almost like 100% guaranteed acceptance in some of those meetings because submissions are so low. So Parkinson's Study Group, for example, I think it's like a 80%, 90% acceptance rate for a student submitting an abstract, even if it's a case report for a movement disorders or something like that. So hopefully those were useful. I'll stop here.
No, exactly. I mean, that's what I've been trying to say. Many more opportunities either are open or definitely much easier when your title is medical student. The minute your title changes to doctor, that's the difference. Maria.
Yeah, I think these are some really good points that I wish I had known as a medical student. And also, what it says is that there are many opportunities out there. We should actually get better at looking them up and, trying to see how we can make the best use of all these organizations as medical students. So I think it would be nice if medical students start writing to these organizations and start looking into all the ways they can participate. I'm gonna build on this. This actually kind of answers some other questions I already had. There were some students asking how they should participate in research as medical students, especially if they're based in Karachi or anywhere in Pakistan and cannot travel, if there are any remote research opportunities. And I think Dr. Kalia already shared some amazing resources, and I guess being more proactive in looking for those opportunities and starting, I guess, small like case reports and reviews is a good way to go about it. Another question that was asked was about timeline. How much we know scores are important, but then we also know that the focus towards USMLE scores is slowly shifting, and a lot of students historically would spend a year or two making sure that they get good scores on your USMLE exams. Would you guys say that should change? Should students try to make sure that their year of graduation is as recent as possible, or would you still suggest that it is important as IMGs to make sure that you get those scores? And I mean, I guess from next year onwards, step 2 CK would be the main exam to focus on. Or what is the maximum we should have as a timeline range when we're applying for neurology?
A very interesting question. So number one thing is that you have to understand there's a huge difference culturally speaking between an American medical graduate and an international medical graduate. So AMGs directly go from medical studentship to internship. We actually have a step mostly in between of house job, which we call our internship. Now the question really is that when the program directors are looking, they really don't understand the word house job that much, because unfortunately there is clearly a terminology difference that they don't really realize that we quote unquote did another internship. So keeping that in mind, and then making sure that you somehow able to explain in your personal statement that this was really an internship, that, or even somehow some other way, whatever that may be, that within your experience, like clinical experience, when you're talking about in your ERAS CV, at least in the description box, you should use the word internship. Anyways, what I was trying to get at is that if you take that 1 year in, the best thing to do next would be to actually do it within 5 years. I'm going to be very honest with you. The only reason that that program directors are considering anyone with the graduation year more than 5 years is the person who has done a PhD. It's that, because there's so much competition right now, and I'm going to be very honest with you that 5-year cutoff is now becoming a big rule. And it doesn't mean that you can't do it. What it means is that you can still do it, but then you have to really do all the good things, right? You don't have any chance of any mistakes, including what we call a champion on your regard. So for example, I had one person 4 years ago, fantastic guy, no issues because he was not able to apply, financial, family, whatever. Then I had to pick up the phone and call the program directors and say, dude, please just review the CV, right? I get it. And look what he has done since then. And then you actually sort of at least get to review the CV. Again, if you look at my, when the ERAS application goes, the committee sits, the program director, the associate program director, the program coordinator. According to the number of applications they get, they decide which to download, right? The first thing is like they decide on the criteria. So if you have, let's say, I don't know, 1,200 applicants, you're going to download 800. So you're going to remove 400. So there's a criteria you even not download those applications at all. So though that criteria most of the time includes, the first thing is have not graduated more than 5 years. They don't generally include scores. Some programs include fails. And the overall field of medicine is also evolving within the education. And we are starting to realize that everywhere, the scores are not important. Pass and fail is important, but scores are not that important. So we're definitely moving away from that. And if you are supposed, I think, did they officially change it to pass and fail yet, or are they going to change it?
They'll do it from next year onwards, January.
Correct. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, period, anymore that, what is the pass or fail. And that's where the soft skills, personal statements, letter of recommendations gets heavier and heavier and more important. Danish.
So I think my take on that question in terms of year of graduation, you have to remember that in North America, the normal cycle is that the medical students apply for the residency during their 4th year of medical school, and they get invited to interview sometimes even before they've done step 2, and based on the step 1 and college letters, or if they're local applicants. So if it's a UNMC student who's applying to UNMC residency, we probably already know him or her based on her rotation in our department or something like that. So, there's local advantages. Now, what happens when someone applies for a position from another country is and has an year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, then it breaks the pattern. So for program directors who are not foreign graduates, it's hard for them to wrap their head around why that student did not apply in their 4th year or final year of medical school, and why they had to wait 2 years or 3 years to apply. But then the second concern that creeps in is that do they even remember anything? Because if they're not fresh out of medical school, have they forgotten all the basic education? And that's a very important information for the program directors, because they need to build on what you already know, and they need to expect a basic performance. So a lot of teaching that we do for medical students here is how to put a note, how to document an assessment and plan, how to examine a patient, bedside behaviors, how to use EMR, and things like that, so that those things that can become a barrier to learning are removed. So if you're coming in and all I'm spending time is telling you how to log in and how to find your password and what is an EMR and how to write a note, then when am I going to teach you medicine? Because this is not medicine, that's the practice aspect. And those concerns become more and more the further out from medical school you are. So what you need to do is to explain, clarify, give details on how you have stayed in touch with those skills after graduating from medical school, and in your personal statement, in your resume, and have to make it repeat in a few areas so that those things are easily picked up by whoever is reviewing your application. Personal statement is the best thing, because program directors apparently read it very carefully. I've had 3 program directors on my observation meeting so far. Every single one of them said that they read the whole personal statement, because it gives them a snapshot, and they expect a snapshot of all the pros and cons of a student. So if that does not have any information on why what they have been doing for 3 years after their medical school, then they may have lost interest in the application or the candidate. So explain that. But let's say you have been busy and you have been doing a residency training in your own country, you are almost ready for a board exam in your own country or something like that, or qualified or board eligible or something. Those candidates are actually very much loved by some programs. Some programs who are very heavy clinical programs, they would love to get people in who are already partially trained, so that it's easier for them to integrate into ongoing clinical work, heavy clinical load, and focus on learning itself. So if you explain that better, that actually becomes your strength rather than a weakness, that you are 3 years out of your medical school. If you can explain that how you went through residency training and what skills you learned, and you're almost ready for board, to take a board exam in your country, but you've decided to move for whatever reasons or for the training, and you're ready to start over, but you already have some skills. If you can convey that across, that actually will become the strength of your application instead. Thank you.
I think that, excuse me, I think that also gives applicants like that a lot to talk about their clinical experience between different countries. And that's a good topic for the interviews. I would ask just one more question in the pre-application or pre-graduation category. A few people asked whether the volunteer work that medical students do as a part of, medical student-led societies, like, Helping Hands and Patient Aids and stuff like that, if it matters to program directors in the US to see that volunteer work, given that these organizations are local and not it's not WHO, UNICEF and stuff like that. And is it worth spending all that time to put that on your CV?
So any significant contribution that basically, in my opinion, defines to 8 to 10 hours a week for 8 weeks should be on your application. And a volunteer experience is very important. And when we're going to come towards the application portion, then we can always, write it in a way that we can pull it together, that how it is important for you being a doctor or your skills or anything like that. So yes, these experiences are important, but again, don't put an experience that you work for 2 hours and that's it. That's not an experience. That's an afternoon. There's a difference between the word experience and there's a difference between the word afternoon, right? That's what I'm trying to say. So if you did actually get an experience in which you learned something, then you should communicate that. Danish?
Yeah, I agree with Junaid. I'll share my personal experience. When I finished my medical school, as I was waiting for my visa actually to come in, there was ongoing volunteer work in Pakistan. There was an earthquake in Pakistan 2005 that was very devastating. And a lot of northern mountain cities and towns were hit pretty hard. So there was work going on by, USAID, UNICEF, WHO, and all so forth. So I actually joined there, and I worked with, I think it was called MSF, Medicine Sans Frontier, Medicine Without Borders. So I was with one of their mission in remote villages and valleys in North America. And I worked there for, I think, 3 months, 3.5 months, something like that. And then my visa came and they were wrapping up the mission. They were planning to roll into a different program or project. So actually most of the people who were working continued on with another project, but because I got my visa by then, I wrapped up and left. I added that to my resume, and it often came up. People who invited me for an interview, as they browsed through my resume, was something unusual that stood out. That I worked for 3 months at remote northern area. So they asked me to describe it. What was your work like, and who was with you? So we actually had the mission head was a Dutch administrator, but we had 2 French neurologists, and we had a Belgian nurse or something like that. So there was like very interesting people to work with, very cool experience. And then I actually had to run a team as a physician of nurses and therapists. And so it became another leadership experience to go to a valley. We took rations with us for 6 days, and we were dropped off. We walked 6 hours into the valley, do a camp for 6 days, and then walk back. And I had to be the final say during those 6 days in that cutoff valley because there was no phone. I actually used to carry a satellite phone back then. This is 2006, I think. And so, that became a leadership experience, that became a skill, that became something that I worked with other people. What I did not do, what I should have done, is that I should have taken a letter of recommendation or something from the Dutch administrator or the French neurologist, and that would have become a very cool letter of recommendation on my resume, and I probably would have gotten even more interviews with that. But I did, I made a mistake because nobody was guiding me, and I wasn't asking around like you guys are. So you guys are already ahead of me. I was just busy in my books and just doing what I could think of, but guidance was really useful. So that was my personal experience.
So actually, FYI, I was there being a Mayman, not a deal Mayman, true Mayman. I'm just kidding. I had AD connections, and I was organizing the whole medical students from Sun Medical College at that point in time. And I ended up getting a letter of recommendation from, that was my first LOR. And let me just show you right now that I did not have a US LOR, by the way. So my first LOR was because coming from Department of Veteran Affairs, Palo Alto Healthcare System, California, in 2008. I'm writing this letter for Junaid Kalia because we met at the first time in Muzaffarabad, Pakistan during October earthquake crisis. And extremely helpful for physician. I mean, he described the whole process. I didn't know I did all this, by the way. But he actually did, and Faisal is actually, still I'm in touch with him because we became good friends. He was like American born, so his Urdu was not good. So I was, and he was an orthopedic surgeon. So I was translating on his behalf because broken bones was the issue with earthquakes. So because of that, then when I came to US, he actually got me 3 United States clinical experiences from his friends. And then it went to actually, me even actually getting a position, but I wanted to go into neurology, so I declined it. I got an internal medicine position. So what I'm saying is volunteer experience matters. It's important, and we do take care of it, especially in an environment where we, as a whole, and as a general, from a purely meta level, nobody really cares about now anymore which university you get from, which degree you're getting. I want to see on what work are you going to be able to do? Show me, right? I mean, my brother is a physician, and then he finished computer science, courses, and now he worked for Intel, for God's sakes. Why? Because he literally showed online like he can do this, and they hired him. So things are changing at a much meta level as well. So yes, these experiences do matter, but again, include only that you have significant contribution to.
I think this also goes to show how we can, foster the relationships that we make to our process. You never know who can actually, lend you a helping hand and help you enhance your application and give you opportunities. So always, I guess, feel free to reach out to, I think as, Pakistanis or anyone from South Asia, our culture does kind of teach us to, I guess not be as, frank or, straightforward, but whenever you see an opportunity, you should try to make the best of it respectfully and see what happens.
I'm just going to put a small asterisk on it. So it's very simple. I do provide a lot of opportunities, and people know some of them are in the audience. But if you're not going to commit, and if I'm going to see that you're lagging, you're going to be booted. That's number one. Number two, when you are, it's very important, don't be shy in asking. Ask what's going to happen, right? Kya hoga? Na bol denge. Isme kya hoga? Marmara jaoge, kuch nahi hoga, right? At the end of the day, you just have to simply say, hey, this is my interest, this is my goal, and briefly, concisely communicate in an effective manner. This is my goal. Does it align with yours? Can we do it together? It's that simple. Always bring the other person in. Hey, I see that you are doing research in this. I am also interested. Can we work together? And then open up the discussion. Always make sure that you bring the other person in so that, we know that, we're going to do that. If somebody comes and talks to me about orthopedics, I'm just like, what am I going to do about it? Right? So therefore, you always have to bring it to the person itself you're also going to. Go ahead,
Mariam. I think this is a very good segue into how to reach out to people, how the networking part, how to email, the alumni of your institution or anyone, in fact, any faculty members in the US. What are your guys' experience in terms of, unpleasant emails or cold emails that, have us just because of the language used? I'm sure the people are really nice, but maybe we weren't trained on how to communicate our wishes without the sense of entitlement that I've heard a lot about, that there's the tone is not the friendliest and the most respectful. So what would you guys say about that, both for medical students and people who have graduated and are looking for research opportunities, clinical experience, or anything in the US?
I'll let associate professor answer this one first, and then as a VP I'll answer.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important aspect. This is a communication mistakes that I see people make are probably the most significant mistakes. We come from a different culture, a different background, different context. And then we go to places like these and get told that you have to be more open and bold and upfront, but then we're trying to translate into, and sometimes we mistranslate. So as you're trying to learn, you're trying to it doesn't go out very smoothly. It's easy to misinterpret or learn. Sometimes you just learn by doing it. So I don't know what's the easy answer to it. Maybe if you have someone, if you're sending an important email, have them read it. I still do it, believe it or not. If I'm going to send an email to my chair, which is very, very important email, and I am worried it may come across wrong, I actually send it to my mentor, my division director first, and say to him, Diego, I'm going to send this email to Matt Rizzo, chair. What do you think? And then often, I will say 90% of the time or more, he'll send back an email saying, adjust the tone a little bit and explain, do it this way, or this will be the pros, or this will be the cons if you say this or that. So I cannot tell you how useful or important this information is. I still, to this day, this Friday, there was an email I was planning to send to my chair. And then I thought, okay, let me just talk to my mentor first. So I called him up And I said, I'm going to send an email to Matt and our chair, and I'm going to say this. And then he went on like 10 minutes of a roundabout. His way is always roundabout. He never directly said, do this or do that. So he told me a whole idea of pros and cons and stories and this and that, and some of his personal stories and all. But I got the point. So, but he explained, if I have sent that email before talking to him, it would not have been as impactful. It would have been wrongly interpreted or things like that. Some things I cannot tell you, to be honest. So it's just some details. So, but I think this is very, very important. But at the same time, repeating what Junaid said in the last question answer is that you have to be proactive. You have to reach out. To just give you an example, I love teaching, but I'm very turned off if I have a student with me who's not asking any question. And it's like, what's the point? If you're just gonna, watch me what I'm doing and, maybe go and write a report later on how my performance was, sure, go ahead and do that. So I just keep doing my things. So I need to be asked a question for me to know, okay, what are you interested in? What are you observing? What is your impression? And then I will teach. So that person or student that asks me question when I'm, with me, I teach a lot. I spend a lot of time teaching them, even if I'm running late on my clinic. But those who don't ask me questions, even if I have time, I just sit around and I do my things and check my emails or something. And that student sits around and check his Facebook or whatever. So, but being proactive, reaching out, asking is very important. But being nice about it is important. Personal experience that I could share is that I came to US in 2007, I believe, for my step in CS, and I had a few months. So the city I was living in, I looked up online what's the closest university, found neurology department there, and I sent email to 8 or 9 people in the neurology department that were listed, and emails were on UNMC's website. Actually, if you go to university website, my website, UNMC website, you can find my email. So you have to dig around, go to a certain page, but you'll find it. These are public knowledge, public information, the professional emails. And you can find a lecture on YouTube from that person, and there is an email at the start or at the end of that lecture or something. Like if you watch my lectures, most of my lectures have my email at the last slide. Most of my presentation, I always put my email on my last slide, my work email. So I just send an email to them that I'm here for a few months, and I am interested in neurology, and I would love to help you out in your project. I don't remember what exact email I said. I was trying to dig my Gmail to see if I can find that email. I was curious, what did I say at that time? But I don't know if it goes that far back. I don't remember if I had a Gmail account back. This is 2007, early 2007. So, but I got reply from 3 people. 3 people reached out to me to come and rotate with them. That's how I got my US letter of recommendation. I worked in Zenith Qureshi Stroke Research Center at UMDNJ, and the head of that center is actually a very dear friend now, Adnan Qureshi, who actually started that center in UMDNJ 3 years ago. And I always tell everyone that he was the reason I got my first letter of recommendation, his stroke research center. But there was also a person who was head of pediatric epilepsy, so he invited me to sit with him on EEG reviews. I didn't get a letter of recommendation from him. I never asked, but it got me a good experience on what clinical practice and EEG looked like. I should have asked him a letter too, and he would have probably given it to me. Very nice guy. He used to take subway from New York to come to Jersey City for UMDNJ, and I often rode subways with him. There's a PATH train actually now, a subway that runs from Jersey City to New York. And there was a third person who's also still a good friend, Dr. Farid Suri, who's an interventional neurologist who said, yeah, sure, but I didn't have time to go to him because I was busy with the first 2 things that I had. That's my experience.
So just to give you an idea, anyone that has communicated to me in a reasonable manner, there is a 98% acceptance rate. That's first thing, to understand that. Anyone who has not communicated gets blocked, to be honest with you, and then doesn't get the opportunity because, to be honest with you, again, it's all about number of applicants to number of resources, right? I mean, if I have 100 applicants for 10 resources, I can't simply I have to create a cutoff, and it's artificial and it's not good. I agree with you. I'm not doing justice to that person. I agree 100%. But the problem really is I have to do justice not to the person. I have to do the justice to the project and the position. Do you understand the mindset? That's the difference. I am not responsible for you, I'm responsible for the project. So when I'm responsible for the project, that's my priority. And if that's a priority, then you have to go through that. So that's one thing, understand, like, again, you understand the person, you understand the project, and then you communicate according to that. And if you're going to communicate with that mindset, then you're going to get in much faster. Number two, as far as communication is concerned, initial communication should be very professional, and it has to be very succinct, and then basically complete honesty in what your goals are. And believe it or not, people are very happy. Like I did like urology, not neurology. I did a United States clinical experience in urology. That's the furthest away that you can get from the brain. But when I approached him, I said, dude, I want to get to a neurology. I really don't know. And he said, what are you doing right now? I said, I'm doing nothing. So she said, why don't you come to the OR and have some free lunch with me? That's it, at the hospital. And because I was very honest, I said, like, I understand that this is urology, but you have to understand that these are my limitations, but I would appreciate any information. I went to him because Faisal told me, and he said, okay, talk to him because you're sitting in North Carolina. That's another issue, right? Location was a big issue, expenses and everything, place to stay. So that was a urologist. So I went to the urologist, and he ended up, we did a whole rotation. He wrote a letter of recommendation. I had 1 month of free sushi from the hospital. And then I ended up coming because of him, I got a psychiatrist and a neurologist contact, and then I went back. So you never know how things are going to evolve. So again, when you're communicating, it's best you tell them, hey, this is my intention. And you never know, the person might actually help you or not help you. But you have to be very honest and upfront and communicate your goals too, because we want to know, and we can tell you, hey, you know what, this is perfect. But by the way, talk to this person because that's a better project for you than my project. The second thing is like Danish and all those people who are in academics get a lot more applicants. I don't, which is great because I don't, that's why my acceptance rate is so high. Is the person who has actually really sought out me is because I'm not in an UNM website or UAB website or anything. I'm actually on VMed, Vice President of Telehealth company. So that's a huge different roles that we're playing. When I get an application, the person either has known me through someone or, and that most of the time has been also been notified that this person is going to call me or email me, not call me and text me, whatever. So that's why my acceptance rates is so high. And like, let's say Umair Hamid was someone who somehow got in touch with me. I have no idea still. Well, he did a rotation in a private practice, right? I was a neurocritical care in a private hospital. And then once he was done, I picked up the phone, called Saud. Saud gave him an opportunity in Texas. Then I picked up a phone and called Danish, and Danish respectfully declined and said, I already have 4 medical students, I can't do. But, he at least responded to me, right? And at least I got it, like, hey, this is not the person, now go to the next person. So when you have one opportunity, it opens the opportunity. So when your behavior remains respectful, and that doesn't have to be, Umair and me were actually, at the end of the time, we had worked for 3 months. I mean, eating together, sometimes I had to drive him and etc. So because he didn't have a car, we were, listening to music together too. So relationship also evolves, but you have to be respectful the whole time. Things to avoid. Number one, do not start with, hey, I want to do this. No, Dr. Kalia, I want to do this, because at least the first communication has to be very professional. Second, use professional pictures. Number 3, have an online presence that they can actually look at you. Like, for example, if somebody approaches me, how do I know who you are? Tell me exactly. Should I go to your Facebook page? Absolutely not. The pictures you guys are sharing are shameful. So don't do that. What I'm saying is that create a proper LinkedIn profile so that I know where I actually can go to get more information about you, because I have to not like, okay, send me your CV. Then you're going to send me your CV. Then I'm going to say, send me your picture. Then you're going to send me your picture. What is this going on? Just have a beautiful online profile already made and just link it. If you want to know more about me, click here. That's it. So that everyone knows where to go, so that they can actually understand what your level, what your where you are in your career, so that we can communicate moving forward. And then lastly, share a professional pictures, because again, first impressions are very important, and first impressions really last long. Unfortunately, people keep saying that do not judge a book by its cover. The very reason that its phrase exists is people do. Next question.
Miriam, if you give me 1 minute, let me show. I actually found that email. This is from March 2007. Let me share my screen here. So this was my first email. I actually went into EMDNJ and I met this lady, Evelyn Verigianis, and she was probably one of the coordinator there. I don't remember her. And I sent her an email. You might remember me. I came into your office and you were in a hurry. I apologize for barging like that. I appreciate you taking time to listen. I wish to apply to next year's neurology match, but for now, I want to learn something by working in a good environment with any good neurology attending. I'm very positive that working in the department will provide me the opportunity I'm looking for. I'm attaching my CV in the hope that you will ask around and get me a place to work and learn. I promise you will not be disappointed in me. Very badly written email, but that was 2007. And then I sent her a reminder because I didn't hear back from her in a day. That's how impatient I was. And I am writing you just to remind you to please spare some. Yeah, don't do that. That's horrible. It's too soon. Give her 2-3 days. But anyways, I sent her a reminder. And then she said, I forwarded you to Dr. Afshin Divani, who's the director of Zenith Qureshi Stroke Research Center. He's involved with both clinical and basic science research and is very productive with publication. Have a nice day. And that's how I got to Dr. Divani, who was my first LOR. And I'm a good friend with him. He's at University of New Mexico, UNM. And he actually just called me 2 weeks ago just to chat about old days and, doing about research and things like that. So he's still a good friend, a great friend, actually. He has sent me many other people to, add for observerships and help them. And we often run into each other at American Academy of Neurology meeting. But that's how things can start. Just one right email can get things rolling.
I think all of this goes to show that a sincere, respectful, and positive attitude really helps. Don't be sketchy. Don't be, if you commit to something, actually come through. I think those are the 4.
Don't be shy. Proactive. It's fine. I mean, what's going to happen, right? You send me an email, I'm going to delete it, right? That's the best. That's the worst situation.
You lose all the shots you take.
So don't be shy. Communicate effectively and then do communicate. It's not a bad idea. Be honest and communicate, and don't be shy. Proactive.
Yeah. I'm going to ask some really specific questions to some people before we leave, because I know we only have a few minutes left. Someone asked that because of COVID, they couldn't get letters specific to neurology. They only have internal medicine letters or do internal medicine letters from Pakistan or from the States, at least 2 of them, of the 4 letters. Is that good enough, or is that a red flag? And someone also asked, I know we've lightly touched on this, that they're an old graduate. They didn't mention how old, and they didn't get any opportunities to do any research because of COVID. What would you suggest that they do to make up for the gap? I guess we should start with the IM LORs first.
I didn't get the question. I'm sorry. Like what to do for LORs if you don't have it?
Yeah, basically some candidates have not been able to get a neurology LOR, and they only have internal medicine LORs, either from the US or Pakistan. And they're wondering if that would hurt their application for neurology.
Junaid, sorry to interrupt, but let me answer this one quickly, and then I have to drop off because I have another meeting to join.
I have some time, so I will continue. That's okay.
Yeah, you can take all the questions. Awesome. So for the letter of recommendation, I think you have to remember the principles. Always remember first principles, why certain thing is doing. So for LOR, only 2 things are important. 1, somebody is saying that you are a good person. And 2, the person who's saying it is reliable, that you can trust it, because you could just write yourself an LOR. But why would I trust it? If you're yourself, that's a conflict of interest. You shouldn't say about yourself. But if it's someone your friends or family, I wouldn't trust an LOR from your parents. Everybody's parents will say their kids are great and awesome. So I'm not going to trust that. I'm not going to trust someone who's in their friend circle or things like that. So you need a person of trust to say that you are a good person. That's it. It doesn't matter internal medicine, doesn't matter neurology, urology, this and that. Don't get all confused in those kind of details. Find the most credible person you can. Either he's credible because he's already well known, or he's credible because his resume says so. He's a chair, or he's the dean, he's the vice chancellor, or something like that. Find the most credible person that you can, and who's willing to write good things about you. So if he writes doubtful things about you, that also will be negative. If he says, oh, I'm not sure, sometimes he's good, sometimes not, then his words are very credible and will be taken on the face value. And we don't want someone who is sometimes good. We want someone who is all the time good. So that's why a good letter of recommendation that someone can write for you. And remember that someone who is willing to write a letter of recommendation has no commitment to you that he will only say good things about you. He will say what he feels like saying. Some people are, are willing to wishy-washy things in a letter, but not everyone. Especially the most credible people, they will say things as they are. So if I'm writing a letter, I will say things as they are. I'm not going to hide anything. I'm going to say it straightforward because my credibility is more important to me than the letter. So often, if not every fellow, for example, movement disorder, asks me a letter of recommendation because they know I'm a straight shooter. I'll write it how it is. So so don't just go ahead and ask a letter because someone is credible. Make sure that you have a really good chance that he will write good things about you and not something that upset him or something like that. So that's the only thing that matters in letter, and everything after that is detailed. That's not that useful. Thank you. I'm gonna drop off here, but thank you everyone for this opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Danish.
Thank you.
So I agree. First important, I think that what you have to learn from him is that first principles thinking. Every time you're doing anything, you should actually create a principle why you're doing it. And he basically designated two principles. Number one, that the number one principle is just find person who's going to speak good about you, right? I mean, don't find a letter of recommendation just because. And then the second one is the better the credibility of that person is, that's the most important thing. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This year, my standards of actually issuing a letter of recommendation have been very laxed. And the reason that I did that was because of the difficulty of COVID. And it has been a really tough year for people to actually, show themselves, right? I used to get 5-6 people walking through, observerships. And the reason I would write a letter of recommendation saying that this letter of recommendation is based on direct observation, direct daily observance of this person for 3 months or so. So that's another thing that comes to your credibility is if you are able to speak to what kind of work and what level of work you have done. So when I open up a letter of recommendation and what I see is not, good things or bad things, I just want to know the credibility of the paper itself it's written on, in the sense that, if you work for 8 weeks with someone, definitely it's a lower credibility, right? As compared to someone who worked for 3 months too. If you have done it indirectly or remote work as compared to directly or, in-person work. So that's another issue. So I personally initially thought that, US letter is not as important. But the interview with my sister, associate program director, is online on YouTube. And she actually made me realize that at least one of the letters should at least be US based. And you should, I got 16 letter recommendations. All my students have all access to all my letter of recommendations. Unfortunately, I have a problem and my wife tells me that I overshare. So another thing to again realize is that it doesn't matter if it's not, it's great that it should be from neurology, but it doesn't mean that you can't actually send or get a letter of recommendation from a non-neurologist. So urological oncology, as I told you, I did it in urology. He sent me a letter of recommendation. Can anyone read that that I'm interested in neurosciences? Because he actually wrote this. I got it in 2 seconds ago. But he wrote a very good, US healthcare regarding patient care regarding access. He just said, the good thing about him is that he joined my service and he realized that how the systems work. So at least when I join your, when I become your resident, he actually says in this letter of recommendation in neurological disorder, I promise you. So somebody can point it out. But anyways, one thing that, again, every letter has its purpose too, right? So what my purpose from that letter was, if I'm not going to get the right letter, like say neurology, at least I can show that I know US hospital systems, US healthcare system, electronic medical records. When I'm going to join your residency, I'm already ahead of the other IMGs because they don't even know how to turn on a computer. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So you have to figure out what purpose anything solves. And then if you have done something, get a letter of recommendation either way, or at least ask for one. Don't be shy. Again, what's going to happen? Say, no, thank you. So that's another thing. And then lastly, yes, US apparently was important. So I relaxed my overall, policies this year for, letter of recommendation, because it has been a difficult year for people to even travel in general. So, but I mean, this exception of this year, I don't write I don't write bad letter of recommendations. I never do, but I simply decline it because that's how I function. But so again, it's very important. Be careful. People actually will write what they want to write. I mean, as a matter of fact, my sister would call me up and say, if I send her something, hey, why the hell did you freaking send me this? Why are you wasting my time? I wrote a letter of recommendations for about 2-3 people, and I did get phone calls, asked me about, like, hey, Junaid, what do you really think about this person? Like, because you are writing a letter of recommendation in 3 months, and that was a generic one, right? I didn't realize that I shouldn't write that. The reason then I realized I should not write generic crap, by the way. And I would like just start generic crap. And then they know, okay, this is so generic. What the hell is going on? So he called me up and he said, what do you really think about the person? And I said, he's okay. So that's why it's very important. And then I stopped writing letter of recommendations for people, except for this year, because this is a very odd year and people have gone through a lot of trouble, family problems, financial problems, traveling problems, etc. So that's a different year altogether. But eventually, people do call back, believe it or not. Or not only that, I have to really, protect my reputation as well. So when I pick up a phone and call Eli Feen at Atlanta, or if I pick up a phone and call the chairman at Ohio University, Osama Zedat, hey, Junaid calling, this is a great guy, I'm texting you, WhatsApping you the CV, by the way, and can you actually take a look and call him for an interview? There's a difference at that point in time. I cannot do that for every single person. So it's always, again, the letter of recommendation is tying together. Now, one last point that I'm going to make is, why is the letter of, people have to tie it together to the real world. What does letter of recommendation prove? Does anyone know? I mean, what is it really is?
I guess it's the testimony for your work ethic, your character, your ability.
We don't know you from Adam, right? So we want to make sure that somebody's actually doing. The broader term that we use is social proof. That's what we are doing. We are doing a social proof that you are actually a decent human person. So make sure that everything else aligns with that too. Like, I mean, I'm going to send a letter of recommendation and tomorrow you have naked pictures on Facebook. What do you think I'm going to happen? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm not saying some people are doing it, but what I'm doing is providing social proof on your behalf. So be decent everywhere else too. So, and this is not a problem for our cultural backgrounds, but people, there have been medical students from every background. So that's why you have to make sure that you act accordingly in a modest way. I mean, have fun. I'm not saying not have fun, but what I'm saying is that there's what I consider social proof, and therefore the social proof is a big subject, and make sure everything aligns with it. Next question.
I think we should move on to interviews now. There are a lot of questions about how to stand out in interviews, how to do justice to yourself, your personal journey, your milestones in interviews, what are the red flags, what obnoxious behavior we should avoid during interviews. And from a cultural point of view, what are the things that, we as, IMGs are, predisposed to during interviews that we should make sure we avoid when, talking to people.
So unfortunately, this is, again, a very bad year. And to be honest with you, the sources that I shared were not supposed to be shared in general. I mean, this was part of a course. And given that the year was so tough, because literally speaking, all my other prior mentees, they would like print out the ERAS application. I would sit with them and highlight and use a red pen. And then they print out the personal statement. I said, change this whole paragraph. Then we'll go back, print it out, bring it back. That was the level of, mentor-mentee relationship I was able to provide in previous years. Now, of course, everything is remote and it's been a tough year. So first and foremost, you have 2 different skills to learn. One is interview skills, and the other one is virtual interview skills. So that's a completely different paradigm as far as interviewing is concerned. So I see like people are always so, shy to open up the cameras. Start doing that. Be comfortable with it, because then you're going to realize that how to frame it. So there's going to be a whole video that I'm going to post on YouTube. I think it's going to come sometime in October. My sister, who's the associate program director, is going to take my interview, and then we're going to stop it, and then she's going to record a reaction video, like what I did wrong. So that's how we're going to proceed with it. I'm going to make some specific mistakes so that to realize people how we're going to do. The second interview video is going to be how to shine on Zoom. There are very few things that there are few things that you can do to really make a difference. Small things you can use to make a big difference, and we can discuss that in much more detail. The first and foremost, the only thing that you have to realize is that interview is a skill. Now, what's the difference between a skill and a talent? So a talent is you're born with, but skill is something you have to practice. I did not get this better in presenting or when I'm speakership or anything. It took me 2 years. That's what I was actually even before that. From YouTube videos, if you see my first video to my latest video, you're going to see a huge difference. And the reason behind it is that I practice. So one of the key things that you have to do is practice. And when I was applying, I did practice a lot with, you have no idea, like all my friends, all 13 of them, I interviewed them and they interviewed me. So the idea was that, we have all different levels of answer and all these ahs were done. And then everyone had a proper form of feedback. And then that feedback was actually written. So you go back, re-prepare those answers and come back and do it again. Skill, practice. So that's the interview part. Now come to the virtual interview part. So I'm going to just do a brief one because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to that YouTube video or not. So there basically, does anyone remember that character ALF? Who is old enough to remember that character?
I need more context. Like, is this a movie?
I'm going to tell you because why I'm telling you is that's going to burn in your memories. That's the only reason I'm telling you that. Can't find it. Don't worry about it. So A stands for audio, L stands for light, and F stands for frame. ALF. Can you write that, someone in the chat? People are very forgiving about your hazy video, about your bad video, about your indirect connections and your choppy of internet connections or video. They will never be forgiving about your audio. Very careful. I repeat that. Video is fine because it's important. But if your audio sucks, if there's a constant hissing in your audio, I'm going to get a headache and I'm just going to say, you know what, if there's constant echoing, I'm going to say, move on. I can't do it. You can't deal with it. So audio is very important. Check your equipment that your audio is coming smooth and fine. So that's number one thing. Number two thing is lighting. So I have a MacBook Pro. So there can be small lights like this. And what you can do is these laptop cameras are very small. So did you see the difference? Just one light. Did you see a huge, like reasonable difference? I suppose, I don't know, because my camera is so overall decent. So do you see now my picture? Does it look better? I hope so. Come on, man, guys, say something. I'm just kidding. So what I'm saying is that it makes a huge difference when you are actually doing such a small thing. These ring lights are available for $18 on Amazon. And in Pakistan, I'm sure somebody, at least one person who does a lot of posts on Instagram and grab her light for a day. So that's what I'm saying, that, that's number two, light. Just it. You don't need a better camera. You don't need a better computer. You don't need a better setup. You don't need a GPU. You don't need a CPU. You need an $18 light. That's it. The last thing is frame yourself correctly. Now, my room is, my regular room is bad. So do you see anything? No, right? So I can easily turn around and then put this in my background. And if I sit over there, what is going to happen? The first thing I'm going to ask you, what? Hey, what's in that background? What does that car look like, man? Do you have kids? What did that attention go to? It took away from you. Where do you want your attention of the program director? On you, right? So make sure that you are the frame. And the framing is normally over here, that you have a little bit room above here, and then mostly above this, and make sure your hands are visible. And the last most important thing that Adil and Danish do a lot better than I do is smile. For God's sakes, put a smile on your face. It's okay, man. Nobody's gonna die. Nobody's gonna move on. Just put a freaking stupid smile on your face the day of the interview and the whole day of interview. Remember one thing. This is not an interview hour. It is not an interview 30 minutes. It's not an interview session. It is an interview day. You are being interviewed the whole day. The program coordinator is going to write it. The residents that you're going to sit with around is going to write a small form talking about you. If there's, give me an example. So I'm a fourth year medical resident. I was not the chief, but the reason I was not the chief was because I had to basically act as a stroke fellow in that time. So Eli Feen, now that's the difference, right? Dr. Feen was my program director. Now I call him Eli. So Eli called me and says that, Junaid, we still want you to actually interview these 10 people because chief residents interview. So we were 3 chief residents and then, sort of the interview. So one of the person actually talked to me and we were taking him for lunch to a restaurant and there was a pre-dinner. Those were the days. And he was talking about, he went to Colombia and he had so much fun. He, used multiple drugs and that was amazing party time. And I said, great, letting me information. Literally within that, I sent a text message to the coordinator and said, you know what, FYI. And the coordinator already put the X mark on it and move on. The whole day is the interview. Be professional. Make sure that you show a smile the whole time. Make sure that you are there. Make sure your camera is on so people notice you. Make sure you do things that are actually towards you and not your background. So that's your small spiel. Hope that helps. Next question.
I just want to mention the worst case scenario. Say that your audio, you do have, an unfortunate internet, connection issue or something happens. How do you advise the candidates, pursue? Should they immediately email the program coordinator, tell them what happened? What should our attitude be? Should you just give up and stop trying? Would you recommend calling them in person, like with your phone, to tell them what's happening? So just, what should be the immediate, thing to do immediately?
So I don't know what each individual setup is going to look like, so I can't comment on that. So generally speaking, medical students over here, all of them have either a laptop, an iPad, or iPhone. Over there, I'm assuming that a single person has either one computer source and one mobile source. Right away, jump on to through the mobile application and then use that. That is your backup right away. And then you should actually go ahead and apologize if you are in a breakout room, for example. You're in a general room and they're going to break out to you to this faculty to interview that, and then they're going to bring you back. So Zoom has this breakout option. Try that. Sit with friends, and then it's free for students. Go ahead and get an access to it. Sit down or ask me if you're in my meetings. I use Google Meet, but I'm happy to show you Zoom around at a certain point in time. Just play with it so you understand how to get into breakout room, how to do not get out of breakout room accidentally, etc. Going back to your question, yes, this is okay, 100%. And you can actually make sure that you join back in here while it's rebooting or something, but do not lose the connection. And this way it's important that and apologize. So what? It happens. Yeah, इतना कोई tension नहीं है. Again, we have to remember, सबसे गलतियां हुई हैं. Every people has problems. People have issues. It's okay. I don't know. My daughter is going to walk in right now and then sit on my lap. It has happened in multiple meetings. So what? It happens. What can you do? You can't control a 2-year-old, right? It happens. Don't get like, oh my God. Ab phir shuru mein ho gaya 5 minute mein, within the first 5 minutes, this happened. The whole day is affected by that. Don't do that to yourself. It happened. Fix it. Move on. Go back to your best performance and your best smile on your face. Do not let it, if let's say if that interview got busted, it's so what? Like there are 6 interviews in the whole day. Make sure they are done good, right? So that's one important thing. And the last thing I would say is, I'm sorry, do you see what just happened? This is called Zoom interruption. And then Mariam, it's not your fault, by the way. It's this huge problem with Zoom. People don't know if the other person has stopped talking. So you have to really train yourself to actually wait a little second more. Have you seen me that I actually do this and wait till Mariam is active? Because I have to train myself that I actually stop and then listen, wait a second till she stopped talking and then start answering. This was deliberate last year performance to understand, because I talked to, like, I'm a VP of a telemedicine company. Banner Health has 27 hospitals. I'm talking to that CEO or CMO. I can't be interrupted. There's always a higher change, right? There's always a hierarchy. So I have to, I have a CEO that I have to answer to. I know I don't have a chairman, I have a CEO. So then what I'm saying is that chain is always exists. So you have to train yourself to make sure that you are not interrupting. Again, interruptions happen. What do? I apologize. I'm sorry to interrupt you. And then move on again. It's okay. Apologize sincerely and then move on. Sorry, go ahead, Mariam. Did you see that?
I need to work on that personally. I do. I feel like in open houses, there have been times where I felt I mistakenly spoke over a resident, and then I was horrified at, like, it's going to come off as arrogant or rude, even though it was just Zoom being Zoom. I think these are some really good interview advice, like tips and tricks. There's not much is left that I feel like we didn't address. What about post-interview behavior in terms of reaching out to programs, how, writing thank you notes, or like what should be the general approach to the
I think we can table that for another, let's say mid-October or something, because, I think same thing with the interview things. I just want to make sure that I answer all the questions related to pre-application and application. And I think Danish was right that we might have to go for the second one. So to make sure that then there would be an interview and then there would be a post-interview sort of closing things. And then make sure you've subscribed to my newsletter and my YouTube channels and stuff, because all this content is going to come. So just to let you know that how do I know this? I actually took a course on facilitation, online facilitation. That's how I learned all these techniques, by the way, to stop, take a breath, etc. How do I know about video making and Zoom better? Because again, Cam Hauser is a good friend of mine who actually, I'm going to call him up actually to come up on and then, share his little bit of experience. So he does called minimal viable videos. He was able to explain, that's his line, ALF. What was A for? Audio, lighting, framing. Those are the 3 things. He actually explained it to me. I didn't know that. So you have to constantly learn these things. And I don't know, when I was your guys' time, we didn't have YouTube that much. So now everything is available. So if you really search on it, Washington's WSJ, Wall Street Journal, actually did a whole YouTube video on how to be good on Zoom. So literally it was that important that they had to do it. So in short, learn. I'm going to stop here. Unmute yourself or type your questions only about ERAS and pre-ERAS, LORs, personal statements, etc. Nothing about interview or post-interview process. That will be, I think we'll find some time.
There were a few questions about reaching out to programs, to the program directors, just expressing your interest in the residency program, but before applying for residency or right after, submitting your applications. Do you recommend that? Do you think it's a waste of time?
Pre application, yes. Pre-application, you can literally ask them. And I have done that because I was in US, I was a research fellow at MCW. And I was sitting here, actually, sent out emails 6 months ago. Actually, I sent out in December, and those were my target because I wanted to go to neurocritical care, neurohospice, stroke. So I knew that these are the St. Louis, like WashU is there, but that's neuromuscular program. I don't want that. I want neurohospice program, neurocritical care program. So when you have the liberty, so I literally called shot them up and said, I want your program and I like your program because of these. What would you recommend for me to do to make sure that I am successful in your program? So I did that. The response rate was only 10%. So if I sent 10 emails, there's one person who replied. And then you always attach your CV. I had some publications, so the reply said, you're already doing good, just apply, thank you for your interest, and then moved on. But most generally, I don't know if that was the issue, but nowadays I see people are getting much better and faster in email. So everyone has a canned response. So you click next, canned response, move on. So people at least reply nowadays. So I would highly, highly recommend it way before, 3 months before at least applying to ERAS, not right now. Post application, why are you wasting my time? I'm just going to ask you that question. Mariam, if you're going to call me up and you're going to email me, what have you done effectively? What you have done effectively is whatever I was doing, like, I have to talk to my chairman, I have to talk to my program coordinator, my wife emailed me that you suck. Like, what happens? Like, in between, there are tons of stuff that is going on. You have to bring food from, on the way back. Dud layo ke nahi layo. Like, simple, like there's tons of stuff that is going on in my head. Everyone's the same, buddy. Like, I have the same problems as everyone else do. So first of all, that's also very important that you have to remember. When you think, oh, ye ho gaya, or this happened, it's okay, man. I mean, I have gone through these problems myself too. It's not a big issue. Sorry, I'm going back to that. So when you have distracted me with your email, what is the value you're bringing? What is the important information that you're bringing that is going to change what I was doing worthwhile? When you can answer that question, send an email. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? If you are going to not able to answer that question appropriately, do not call me, because then it's a negative impact. So that's why I tell people, right, okay, you have written a significant publication, then you attach the PDF and send it to the email, or a book chapter, or something that you have done enough that you can say that, okay, this is a value added. As a matter of fact, hey, here's the PDF, you're going to learn something, sort of thing. Then you add, then you communicate. If you don't have something to add, don't do that.
What about personal preference, like geographical reasons? Your significant other is in that city or state, or the personal reasons that might make you want to consider that program. Do you think it's appropriate to communicate that to the program directors? Or
yes, it's very important. Oh yes. If
so
you like the
program, waste your time.
No, it's extremely important actually. It makes a huge difference. I mean, I came to UT Southwest in Dallas, Texas, right? And I was between the fellowship, between Rush and Neurocritical Care Fellowship is easy to get, as a matter of fact, either way. So a guy calls me up and says, are you really planning to come? And I'm like, yes. I mean, because I sent a thank you letter that, hi, I'm highly interested. So he says, are you BSing me, or you said, dude, my mom and dad lives there. I'm coming. So if you tell me right now, I'm going to stop worrying about it, because I don't want to go ahead and, go tell everyone else that, I'm going to come and all that crap. So he said, okay, sounds good. So, people really appreciate that, but you have to give a solid reason, right? Again, don't BS. We will know. Most of the time, we will know that you are BSing somehow, because there's so much information. There's a letter of recommendation, then there is CV, ERAS application, then there is personal statement. There's something you're going to miss in consistency. If you're going to start lying, there's consistency mismatch. And then you, again, listen to my lecture that Sarah did. She actually completely goes through an application in 7 to 8 minutes, including the personal statement and the letter of recommendations. And then she puts it in hierarchy. And she tells me that, within 8 minutes, I can tell you what I can mark it out. This is inconsistent. This is inconsistent. This is inconsistent. This is the red flag. This is the red flag. This is the red flag. And she moves on, because she has to review 1,200 applications. So they know. I don't, because I'm just an interviewer. I'm not a selecting process. They know. Next question.
I actually have, and we don't have any more questions. There are Just one more question, I guess, for the applications for people who were not able to do any US clinical experience in the US, only have Pakistan or India or whatever their home country, rotations and electives. How would you advise them to address that? Should they address it at all? Would that be actually a negative thing that they're highlighting the fact that they don't have US clinical experience in terms of in the personal statement or elsewhere in your application? Or is that something that's an acceptable part of the application season this year because of COVID?
Yeah, I don't personally, it's a different approach, by the way. Some people actually, I don't know, Adil, what are your thoughts about it, to be honest, since Danish is not here?
Sorry, I was not listening to the question. What did you say, Mariam?
Not having US clinical experience and only having your home country clinical experience, should you highlight that and address that in your application, or just be okay with it because so many other will be in the same boat as you because of COVID?
I think everyone understands. So I also take part in the AIN Graduate Education Committee. And then I think this year they sent out a letter where they say that the program director should not focus on who has done how many weeks of electives in the US because of the COVID situation. So I would take the opportunity, if you have done something in the home country, I would just highlight that what you have done and wouldn't worry about if you have no experience in the US. So just for this year, and then also for the last year, that was the situation as well.
So I'm going to give it a general rule. I never discuss negative things about myself. It's that simple. Why? Like, why do I have to discuss negative thing about myself? I never do that. If I'm a second author, I will never say that. If I'm the first author, you're going to hear about it. Oh, you're going to hear about it. I'm going to be in Twitter, WhatsApp, everywhere. You're going to hear Junaid, Kalia did something. Ab tak danka bajana hota hai. Lekin negative stuff, do not pull it up. Why? What's the point? Never put omissions, negative stuff anywhere, in my opinion. What you do is you highlight the stuff that you have. That's my general principle in life.
Yeah, I agree. Like, own anything you did and just highlight that. If there is anything missing, just, leave it on them to figure it out. Just own anything you did and highlight that. Be very confident.
So do people have raised their hand? So I think Umair was the first one. So why don't you unmute yourself and introduce yourself first and then ask the question.
Yeah, so my name is Umair. I am a medical graduate from Dow Medical College 2016, and I'm currently working at a postdoc fellow at Northwell Health in New York in a translational neurophysiology lab. So thank you for all the panelists and hosts for this session. I have one specific question regarding, like I recently did an externship, and the letter writer is most likely will be uploading the letter next week. And I was wondering that if it will be uploaded until the time of the deadline, is it wise to write down on the program description that because of the delay in the uploading in the ERAS, I wasn't able to upload the letter was not uploaded. That's why there's no letter of recommendation for that specific clinical rotation.
I can actually answer that because I'm going through something similar. One of my letter writers is going to hopefully write the letter this weekend, and she said that she would upload it by Monday. In my experience so far, and maybe you've had your other letters uploaded already, Omar, like,
Right.
So, it takes like 2-3 days for it to get uploaded, then maximum 4 to 5 days for it to get processed. And what I'm actually doing is making sure that my entire application is ready to go, and that's the only thing that I'm waiting for. And I know our deadline is 28th, and I was hoping to submit my application by 25th because I keep hearing that ERAS can crash if there's a lot of traffic on it, and don't be. But unfortunately, that's the situation we are in. I would rather apply a day or two late than apply without an incomplete application. That's my approach to it. If anyone has anything to add to that, feel free to do so.
So there are a few things that really are extremely important. And I think one of them is applying at the deadline. Yeah. I would put them as one of the, because here's the issue. And again, I didn't realize that, to be honest with you. When you talk to different program directors, and I was like, so Sarah did as a program director, she says that she starts downloading at the 24-hour mark. And then she has a criteria, and then she stops those applications. So अगर आपने, if you're going to put your application at 72 hours, she's already downloaded it and moved on. अब उसके 1200, she's already has 1200. What are you going to do? She's going to go back and then find duplicates and all that. No, you're done. You're out. There is no way that you're going to delay your application period. What you can do, now this is a very good opportunity to communicate to the program, right? Then you say, unfortunately, because of this reason, I was not able to update this letter of recommendation. I would really appreciate that you see this. And this is what you're going to do, have a value added service to the program. And you say, you know what, here's an email. Or if you don't do it to the program director, just send it to the program coordinator. As a matter of fact, emails get lost a lot. I used to fax them. So mere paas agar koi aata, like if somebody comes through and this is like, I take 1 or maximum 2 projects a year. I've chosen already one for the next year, so don't even bother. So what I'm saying is that if I have that person that I'm really, going to help out, what I'm do is then I not even email them. I actually send them via fax as well, because then the program coordinator also picks it up. So there's different ways to get attention, and I make sure that that person gets attention. So what I'm saying is that in that regard, please do not delay the application. And at the last moment, you can, and then I don't know if ERAS has a way to actually change letter of recommendations, but I know that I can change my own letter of recommendation after it has been uploaded. So as an uploader, I know I can change it, but I don't know at your screen, at your interface, can you change it or not? But don't delay it.
Yeah, that was, sorry, Rabia, go on. Okay, so that was my biggest concern, because I was actually thinking that if if I'm emailing coordinators, I've resubmitted my letter is a new letter has just come through. Can you please look it up? Wouldn't that do me more disservice? But I guess I didn't know that all the applications get downloaded in the first 24-hour mark. I thought an application showing up is a more impactful thing than an email that might just get lost in that very busy initial period. But
correct. That's why I'm telling you that either way, impact or not, it is definitely important that your application actually gets reviewed in the first place. And if you're going to delay it more than 24 hours, think of it that you never submitted your application. Do you understand? And number 2, fax it also. Okay, email it and fax it. And I don't know, Rabia, you were adding. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rabia, can you? I'm not familiar with you. Do you mind actually introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Rabia Jami. I'm from Pakistan. I went to med school at Aga Khan, graduated in 2013, then did my neurology residency at UAB, and then my 2-year epilepsy fellowship at UT Southwestern. So I'm in Dallas right now. Mariam, I would definitely say, send in your application the moment it opens. Do not delay. My brother was my senior, and his step 2 score was missing. It was going to come like a week after ERAS opened, and every faculty member at Aga Khan sort of told him to go ahead and just submit it, and then 1 week later, whenever your score comes, email all the programs all over again and just say that, hey, this was missing and it's in now. And that would sort of give you, and this way you will be in their email chains as well, in addition to being on ERAS. And it sort of worked for him. And I agree with Dr. Junaid that they have this certain mark that within certain hours they're going to filter all the applicants, and then they're not going to look at the entire pool again. So even at UT Southwestern, when we were going through neurology residency once, they had a 36-hour mark, and after that they were not going to entertain more applicants, and they were just going to filter whatever they had already, sort of filtered within the 36 hours. So the first 36 hours matter a lot. I would say that, have every single thing ready, and the moment it opens, hit go, go, go. Oh. Not delay it. That's literally what me and my family did. Everybody in my family was on laptops, and everybody was just trying to put in my application through. You just want to be in there. It doesn't matter if one thing is missing. My brother's step score was missing, but a week later he got it, and he still matched where he wanted to be and everything.
Thanks for that, Rabia. Are you also saying that we don't do it early, we do it right on the spot, or are you saying we should just complete it and be as far from the deadline as possible?
I'm not sure. I think at least as far as I remember, we could only do it when the deadline started. Maybe things have changed a deal. Do you know that? I thought that you could not apply beforehand.
Yeah. In short, the minute the application opens up, you should
Exactly.
be ready and hit submit.
That's what was in my mind. The moment it opened, like we were all up at that time and just trying to get it in. That's all.
I think we are already 40 minutes late, so let's just take 2 more questions because Amrita and then I think Sobia has raised her hand. So Amrita, why don't you go first and ask your questions, unmute yourself, and also introduce yourself first.
Yes. Hello, Dr. Kalia, Dr. Memon, and everyone out there, and thank you for your time. So I'm Amarta Bai, and I graduated from St. Medical College and in 2017. Afterwards, I went as a Fulbright scholar to pursue Masters in Neuroscience at Brandeis University. So I'll be pursuing this US Mesh this season, and I had particular 2 questions regarding the mesh process. So the first question is about the prelim plus advanced programs and categorical programs. So I was wondering, like people say that there are not as many as prelim programs if you get matched into advanced program versus the categorical one. So what's the smartest way to go around it, like the percentage of programs that you should apply in categorical versus prelim plus advanced? And my second question is that as an IMG, sometimes people recommend us that have a backup plan. So even if I'm really, really interested to go into neurology, but some people would say that have a backup plan, either apply for some IM programs for backup reason or whatever it is. So what would be your suggestion regarding that? Because sometimes people say that it's taken as negative, like in front of the PDs if you're applying to 2 programs. Thank you so much.
So the first question was basically advanced versus categorical. The answer is very simple: matched versus non-matched. So if you're going to get matched and get in a categorical position and not an advanced position, it's still a better way to at least match in an advanced position. So, and then we can figure out the preliminary. My brother-in-law, Abbas, who's currently faculty at University of Arizona, did not match as in his preliminary. He only matched in the advanced position. So on the day off, 16 of us sat down and called what we call post-match. What is the term for that, by the way? There's a specific term. Huh?
Soap? Are you talking about soap?
Yeah. Yeah, Lifebuoy soap, apparently. You really gives jata un 3 din mein aadmi. So what I'm saying is that then you start calling, faxing EVs, etc., emailing, etc. And then the real answer is yes, matched is better than not matched. Matching in categorical is better than not advanced position. But definitely send it out. It doesn't mean you should restrict yourself. I did, but so I'm very honest when I'm doing something that I'm not personally practiced. It's because I had been 2 years here. I had been a research fellow. I have a green card. I had like 16 letter of recommendations. I had 40 abstracts, 3 published papers. Like there was a CV and people are calling on my behalf. So there was a difference. And I didn't want to take the chance at that point in time that, hey, I'm going to move. And then 1 year after that, because I'm getting married and then I'm going to move again after a year. There are different people of different interests. But what I'm saying is that in general, a matched is better than non-matched. And then what happened is one of the people that came to me in application, he said that, I matched in an advanced position. Since I was not able to match in a preliminary position, I was not able to go with my residency. Do you know what we did? That's actually a true example. Zafar Kaleem, one of my good friends, actually. So what we did was that we let him start the advanced position in neurology for 3 years. We didn't let him complete the residency. And in the 4th year, the final year, he was completing his internal medicine. That was at SLU. That's what happened in front of my eyes, my batchmate, my close friend. Other thing that happened is that the person who actually did match and did not find a preliminary position, the program director was kind enough to say, I'm sorry that you had to go through this. I will still hold your position for next year. So he actually, able to, he did not have to go through the match of neurology residency. The next year he was only matching for preliminary residency. So either way, there is better to know match than not match. Last
That's
question.
A great insight. Yeah.
Go ahead, Sobia.
Hello everyone. Thank you for a wonderful and informative webinar. I'm very thankful answers. My question is, I did residency in Pakistan.
Just one question, one hold.
Yeah,
Will you interview this person with that audio, by the way? I'm just examining you, right? I'm just no offense, Sophia. I mean, this is just a web. No. I apologize, but do you understand the difference? Is it okay to hear that and then interview? You're not going to interview 20 minutes, right? You're going to say, okay, yeah, 5 minutes, you're done, and that portion is a problem. FYI, just I'm sorry, you were a perfect example. I apologize for that, but everyone has to learn somewhere. So thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Sophia.
Yes. So before I was speaking, my internet was completely crashed. So I apologize for that. So it's fine. I think it's fine. So my question is, I did residency back home, and last year I applied, but I did not match. And I showed my ERAS CV to 2 or 3 people, and they said, "Where did you mention your residency?" So since we cannot mention it in the residency under ACGME, we have to mention it under work experience. But it can never be highlighted in that area. So my question is how to highlight the residency back home.
Yeah, that's actually 2 areas. And I didn't realize, to be honest with you, I thought personal statement was garbage. I thought, like, you know what do you do that? Apparently, every program director and assistant program director reads it cover to cover. That's the first thing they look actually nowadays, because there's a cutoff on the application, right? Now there's pass fail for USMLE. So what is really distinguishing you, right? So we know that cutoff actually only included the people we are anyways going to look for applications. That cutoff doesn't matter on the objective parameters as much. The first thing they look is for personal statement. Explain it on your personal statement that you have extensive experience in the subfield already, and that makes a huge difference, by the way. So SLU has been basically importing neurology residents from Thailand every year, and then they do it both ways. So they directly go to stroke fellowship, or they come into residencies, those who have been attendings in either ophthalmology or neurology for a long time, because the chairman was a neuro-ophthalmologist. Anyways, what I'm saying is that, yes, it makes a huge difference in short, and you need to highlight it. Personal statement is the right place to highlight it. And in the work experience, also use words like internship, residency, clinical training, so that they understand that you had further clinical training, and rather than just saying it's work. Okay, guys, I have to leave.
We should wrap it up. So thank you, Mariam, and thank you, Dr. Junaid, for taking the time out and giving so many useful advices to everyone.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, guys.
And Dr. Jameen. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone.